welcome back to another episode of Set Musings. So we're up to Amonkhet now. So we're also currently in the 2 set per block paradigm, and this is the first set of the 2 set Amonkhet block. It's a large set, 269 cards in the boosters. Again, in terms of the set, and we'll see this, I'll sort of deal with it as we go through the slicing and dicing in this episode. But the water gets slightly muddied because some of those cards are only present, so there's additional cards above the 269 cards in the boosters which are only present in the Planeswalker decks. So there's 8 cards which are exclusive to the Planeswalker decks, and then there's this strange overlap as well between the Planeswalker decks and the Deck Builder's Toolkit for the set, which are these 10 common dual tap lands which feature in the Deck Builder's Toolkit, but also 2 of them are in the Planeswalker decks as well. So yeah, but you'll see in a moment. We'll go through it. So the booster side of things, let me just scroll through here so again we can get a feel for the artwork. You'll see that obviously thematically we have, what would you call it, an Egyptian theme, ancient Egyptian theme maybe. So obviously that's very much reflected in the artwork, and you'll notice that in terms of the boosters, the numbering goes up to 269, and then those extra cards, the Planeswalker deck cards and the common dual tap lands, they have numbering above the 269. So their set number here goes above that value. The other thing you'll notice as well in the set is there's a Graveyard Matters theme, there's cartouches, there's curses, there's discard, we have brick counters, -1/-1 counters, there's split cards. In terms of the keywords and ability words to look out for, we have Aftermath, Cycling is in the set, Embalm and Exert. So you can see that some of those will be new to Magic at the point in time that this came out, this set came out. Obviously Cycling is something we've seen before in much earlier sets. You'll also notice as I've got down to the bottom here, a number of these 2 colour cards look like they might well be draft indicators or archetype indicators. Then we get onto these cards here, these unusual split cards. And then our artifacts, and then we're into our non-basic lands, and then our basic lands as well. You'll notice something else about the basic lands which I'll come back to. So in terms of the numbers above 269, so here's 10 cards. And in terms of the numbering, it gets a little weird with the dual lands because these are included in the Planeswalker decks. They're not side by side in terms of the numbering. So this one's 274 out of 269, and this one is 279 out of 269. Also notice the presence, each of the decks, not surprisingly it's called a Planeswalker deck, so here's our 2 Planeswalkers. We've also got some namesake cards here, but also cards that care about controlling the Planeswalker. So look, you'll often find that in these decks, in addition to the Planeswalker itself, there's some sort of namesake card which enables you to tutor for the Planeswalker. And then there's another card which might not necessarily have the Planeswalker's name in the card name, but will certainly reference it in some way, albeit slightly less specific. So you can see here it says Controller Gideon Planeswalker, as opposed to the tutoring card, which is very specific to the name of the Planeswalker. And the same in the black one, same sort of thing. And then also, in addition, outside of those related cards and the dual land, and one other card in each of the decks. So we've got Graceful Cat, so this is, you're getting +1/+1 to the cat, and the Mummy, when it dies each opponent loses 2 life. And we'll come back to these Planeswalker decks at the end of the episode. So here's the rest of the dual lands that come into play tapped, and so these start at 280 and go up. So these are the remaining 8 out of the 10. Now in terms of the toolkit did have all 10 in it. I just wanted to point out why the numbering was a little bit weird. Invocations were a thing in the set, in both Amonkhet and the set following it. So that all the invocations were referred to, I believe, as, or the set was referred to as Amonkhet Invocations, and had this MP2 set number, but they were split into 2 bits, so they only appeared in each of the 2 sets. You can see there's the Hour of Devastation ones. It's interesting because down here they're referred to as MPS, and that's something else I noticed when I was researching this. So on the Scryfall database, the code word, or whatever you want to call it, what do they call that thing? The expansion code is listed as MP2, but when you actually look at the cards, it's MPS. I think that might be because it's quite possible there's something else on the database which is MPS, maybe. But just so you notice, there's a difference there. So the cards and any articles you read, like MTG Wiki, refer to the expansion code as MPS. But when you're searching through Scryfall, if you want to repeat this sort of slicing and dicing exercise, then yeah, they're MP2 on there. So there's 30 of those. And you can see again, something we were seeing with these is the border artwork is set specific, and it can be quite difficult to read. If you can see that, it takes a bit of a look to see what's going on there. So this is another Masterpiece series. All premium foil cards with a special Amonkhet card frame and a separate expansion symbol. They're not part of the set, as I've said before. All new art, card frame, Egyptian inspired. And they appear slightly more often than premium mythic rares. But again, notice that we have reprints here. So 26 cards are reprints in the set itself, so outside of that special invocation set. And you can see the non-basic lands are actually reprints. Evolving Wilds is actually reprinted as well, and as is often the case with Evolving Wilds, you'll see often there's set-specific artwork for that. 241 cards which are not reprints. Now, as we're going through this, keep a lookout for some quite different card types. We've got cartouches as a card type, gods, curses, jackals were reintroduced as a creature type. Zombies, apparently this is the first ever monocoloured white zombies were in this set. Up to this point there had been no monocoloured white zombies. And deserts, so the first card using the subtype since the original desert appeared in as a time-shifted card in Time Spiral. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff to keep an eye out for as we go through, and a lot of these will obviously feature when I slice and dice the setup. So just let's get a feel for that, the whole sort of colour breakdown. So we've got 14 cards, which in terms of either casting cost or activation costs are totally colourless, including their colour identity. However, you may notice that in the presence of these monuments they do reference certain colour of spells. We have no cards where there's, or no, well, normally it's artifacts, isn't it? But none of that sort of type where the casting cost is, you know, a mana of any colour, but there's a coloured activation cost in there. There's no cards in the set that fall into that category. There are 206 purely mono-coloured cards. So, pretty heavy monocolour set. We have no cards where there is single colour in the casting cost, but they have a additional another colour in the activation cost somewhere. And then we have 26 two-colour cards that are two-colour in various ways. They might be, in the case of here, where you've got two colours in the casting cost, but the other way it's represented is we have these split cards, like failure to comply. So the failure part is blue and the comply part is white. And we'll take a look at split cards properly in a moment, but just to get a feel for the two colour stuff. And you can see blended in amongst that in the 26 are obviously those draft indicators. Nothing more than two colour cards in the set, or two colours, no more than two colours in the casting cost. And I think I can also check, let's just see. I think I did have that. Let me just check. No, that's something I wanted to bring up. So there is one card which its colour identity is 3 colours, has 2 here and 1 there. Right, in terms of the sort of creature types that are turning up in white, we've got humans, as I mentioned, zombies. You can see there's quite a number of zombies here. A lot of human warriors, and several birds. There's one of the gods. You'll see a number of cats as well in the set. So white, we're seeing humans, cats, zombies, birds, and angels in there, and a god. And in terms of the multicoloured cards, so we've got quite a few here that share white in the casting cost. Because in addition to those ones that are part of that cycle of archetypes for drafting purposes, there's a rare here as well. In blue, crabs, drake, bird warrior, serpent, sphinx. There's quite a bit of diversity creature type wise here. There's another god. Naga clerics, so some clerics. Yes, this is pretty much all over the map, although we do have a number of Nagas here. And then just over into the multicolour cards with blue in the casting cost. So black, demons, zombies, birds, there's another god, zombie naga, human, zombie jackal. So more zombies, some horrors as well. There's a scorpion demon. I don't know if that's been a thing before. And then you can see quite a mixed bag on the ones that have black in the casting cost. Red, I wonder if we're going to see lots of Minotaurs or not. There's a couple there. Jackal Road, Human Warrior. Lots of warriors in the set. Beast. More Minotaurs. Dragon, Human Cleric, God, Manticore, Hyena. Another Manticore, another Minotaur. No goblins. And then I don't think that would really fit in with the theme of the set. Also keep your eyes out for some of these tribal cards. And then moving on to green, it's jackals again. And I suspect we're going to have no elves here. Again, doesn't really fit in with the theme. Naga, lizard, crocodile. There's a camel there. It's been a while since we've seen a camel, maybe. But you can see quite a lot of cats. And then moving on to the multicoloured ones. Okay, big spells. 14 big spells. That's quite a lot for a set. Starting off with ones that are 7 casting cost. Oh, I see why. Yeah, so of course if you leverage both parts of the split card, then yeah, that obviously bumps the casting cost up. Interesting. Wow. Okay, I see. So you can see here, I don't know how easy that, we'll come back to this. We've got Aftermath. So cast a spell only from your graveyard, then exile it. So yeah, it's a little bit misleading, I suppose, because of the way, these are cast, in that you can only cast this part from your graveyard. So it doesn't work like some other split cards where you can combine the two by paying the full casting cost. So that would explain why, you know, these spells are probably much more dramatic effects and much higher casting costs overall. So yeah. So 53 cards that mention the graveyard somewhere, either in the Oracle text or what's referred to as the full or the extended Oracle, well, in the full Oracle text. So Embalm is a graveyard related ability. So same with Aftermath, so that's why there's just so many. So some of these are obviously going to reference them specifically, and some of them reference them in the reminder text. We have 5 cartouches, which I'm sure we'll come back to in a moment. Looks like they form part of a cycle. So all the cartouches were part of a cycle. We've got a couple of curses, and they enchant the player. We've got 26 cards that reference discard in some way. So, you know, that makes a lot of sense in combination with, you know, the graveyard theme as well. The two work nicely together. And then we have these brick counters as well, and there's 4 cards which mention those. There's 28 cards that have some reference somewhere to -1/-1, either in the regular rules text or the reminder text. I think for all of these, actually, it's always in the main rules text. I don't think there is any, thinking about it, looking at these in the reminder text. I think I included that just in case any of these cards specifically mentioned poison, which they don't. So -1/-1 is a thing, but there's no mention in the set of poison counters or poison, you know, within here, I don't think. You might see it elsewhere in the name of something, possibly. In fact, I believe, yeah, here in this one. So it's only mentioned because of the name. 15 split cards. And as you can see, they're composed of like a non-graveyard component, if you like. So, you know, these are cast as you would cast a spell of that type. So they're instants and sorceries. And then there's the other part of it is an aftermath part, which can only be cast from the graveyard, and then you exile it. And they are, there is one instant actually. I think that's the only one. Yep, for that part. And yeah, so split cards, aftermath cards, all split cards are aftermath cards, and all aftermath cards are split cards in this particular set, or part of a split card. 40 cards that mention cycling somewhere in the cards rules. So again, you know, a lot of support for getting stuff into the graveyard. So you've got, you know, initially that heavy graveyard matters theme, but then you've got discard, and then you've got cycling. And we have Embalm. So with Embalm, there's a costing card. So Embalm, for, in this case for the Anointer's Priest, Embalm for 3 and a white. 3 and a white, exile this card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a white zombie human cleric with no mana cost. Embalm only as a sorcery. So all of these you can see, there's 15 of these. It looks like they're creating tokens of themselves from the graveyard. Just looking to make sure there's nothing that says, you know, give all creatures in your graveyard Embalm or anything like that. I don't think so. 17 cards with Exert, so you can choose to exert these cards. Looks like as they attack. An exerted creature won't untap during its next untaps. So that's what it means to exert something. So it won't untap during your next untap step, like cards would normally do. So it stays tapped for a following turn, I suppose, until a following untap step is reached. So you get something now and you pay for it later in terms of not being able to attack with the creature for an extra turn, unless you find another way to untap it, of course. 5 gods in the set. Or 1 in each of the colours. So this is a cycle. So I suppose you could say this was maybe handled in slightly different way, in which it went from being a god to being something you could attack with. And so you can see here we've got on this one, for instance, as an example, a Creature of the True can't attack or block unless you control at least 3 or other creatures. The blue one, unless you have 7 or more cards in hand. The black one, unless a creature died under your control this turn. The red one, unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. And the green one, unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. So it's, you know, slightly different, I think, in some ways than the previous gods we've seen. A little bit of a twist there. So they each have a keyword, a combat restriction, and an activated ability to fulfill this restriction. So they sort of help fulfill the restriction. Cycle of cartouches. Common or enchantments that have an entry ability and grant the enchanted creature +1/+1 and a keyword with the additional subtype cartouche. And there's a bit of variability there on the casting cost as well. Cycle of trials. So uncommon enchantments with an entry ability, an entry effect, making them act like sorceries that returns to the hand when a cartouche enters. Oh, the cycle of monuments. So uncommon legendary artifacts. So uncommon legendary. They're associated with 1 god costing 3 mana and reducing the cost of a creature spells associated with its god's colour by 1. And also have a trigger when a creature spell of any colour is cast. So this can give you a clue sometimes. So we've just got black creature spells We got this life exchange. The red one, you know, the thing you sometimes see these instants do in red, or sorceries in red, where they, you know, you discard a card and then you draw a card, as opposed to the blue thing of, you know, either drawing cards or drawing cards and then discarding. So we've got the blue one here with, what's that, tap down on it. The white one's warrior tokens, and then the green one is pump. So yeah, they're intermeshed with the gods' abilities in some way by the looks of things. So there is, within the split cards, there's a cycle of, well, various. I think there's various. It says multiple cycles or not. I think, yeah, there is actually. So there's, you know, the monocoloured split cards. I'm having trouble with that. So these are rare ones, and they all feature the aftermath mechanic, and they're all monocoloured. We'll come back to those in a moment. We'll get onto the two-colour cards. We have a cycle, what are called cycle effect commons. So these are cards that will have an ability which triggers when the card is cycled. And there's a cycle of cycles. Oh yeah, these, the allied coloured cycling jewels. So a set of rare allied coloured cycling lands. And they are new. Nice artwork. Another cycle of split cards. So these are reversed allied coloured rares. 5 allied coloured split cards featuring the aftermath mechanic. Oh, I see. So yeah, I suppose you could say they're round a different way from the normal order in the Wooburg chain. So we've got blue-white instead of white-blue, black-blue instead of blue-black, red-black instead of black-red, green-red instead of red-green, and white-green instead of green-white. Okay, I get that, yeah. But they're still allied colours. And then there's enemy coloured uncommons. 5 enemy coloured uncommon split cards featuring the aftermath mechanic. Yes, the 10 uncommon cards, which each represent a 2-coloured draft archetype for the set. Nice. I think this is another set we're going to have fun. We do the Friday artwork video, but we always have fun when we do the Friday artwork video. The reprinted dual lands, so 10 common dual lands that enter the battlefield tapped. This cycle cannot be found in booster packs and were printed for use in supplementary products and as to be kept in standard. So they were in standard, but they were just printed in other products. And as I mentioned earlier, all 10 of them cropped up in the Deck Builder's Toolkit, but 2 of them, and we can easily see that if we sort by the set number as opposed to the colour. So these 2 also crop up in the Planeswalker decks. Oh, there's our brick tokens. So that's a vertical cycle of build a monument. So the brick tokens also form this build a monument vertical cycle. So 4 artifacts with 2 abilities, one of which has a minor effect and adds brick counters, and the other is a more powerful version that requires 3 brick counters to activate. You can see there's the common, the uncommon, and then 2 rares. 17 mythic rares. You can see, because we're looking at the set as a whole, including the ones in the Planeswalkers decks, you can see the ones from each of the Planeswalker decks are also here. And you basically just look at the number to see which is which. Ah, 20 basics. So they did something interesting in this set. So there were 3 of each of the colours of mana in the regular card frames, and then there was 1 that was full artwork. But I must admit, you know, I wouldn't say it was similar, but when you looked at them, they did have all this horns look, and this will make sense once we get to, was it the next set, the small set, which would have been, was it Hour of Devastation, I believe is the, yeah, Hour of Devastation. So everything, understand what the significance of this is. So only 1 variation per manner of colour. Be interesting when I come to do the Land Ahoy episode how far in we get. I think I'm going from the set after Battle for Zendikar, somewhere around there, just as long as, you know, as far as I can get before it gets too boring. So I don't know if we'll get this far, but we'll see. And 21 non-basics. So you can see we've got cycling lands here. We've got those dual tap lands as well. And additionally, we've got Cascading Cataracts, Cradle of the Accursed, Evolving Wilds I've already mentioned, Grassdune Dunes, Painted Bluff. And you can see some of these are deserts. Oh, and Sun-Scorched Desert. I don't know if I've got all of these, but we should see some of these in the Friday artwork video. Actually, yeah, I've gone a bit land crazy in that episode. So there's our Planeswalkers. So 3 in boosters, 2 in Planeswalker decks. We've got 15 legendaries. So 5 of those are going to be the gods. And then if you look, you'll see that, if I can just try and see if it's easy to spot these, how they break down. So interestingly, 5 mono-coloured ones. Then we've got 4 in 2 colours. So white, blue, black, red, red, green, and then black, green. So they don't follow like a whole cycle in either allied or enemy colours. And then we have the monuments, which are legendary artefacts, are uncommon. And then we have the Throne of the God Pharaoh. Again with that reoccurring symbol, which you sort of see crop up in various guises. $127 creatures in the set, 19 enchantments. In amongst those, of course, the trials. We have 13 auras, of which 5 are the cartouches, and then a couple of curses in there as well. our only artifact creature is our Watcher of the Dead. Equipment wise, we have one piece of equipment. And then we have 12 just regular artifacts, of which you can see several of these are legendaries. And that's bumped up because of the presence of those that uncommon cycle of monuments. 43 instants. Wow. Let me see if I can summarise this in some way. I don't really want to go through all these individually. So if we see a common denominator. So we've got the usual things. Getting rid of artifacts or enchantments in. I don't know how much that is a white thing though, actually. So you can see here, this ties in with the presence of zombies in white. Got a few here. Life gain, pump and flying, untap. Damaging an attacking or blocking creature, cancels in the set. Counterspell, conditional, counterspell. Tap down. There's those aftermath split cards. It's interesting though because there's one that cares about cycling or discard. I'm just trying to pick out ones that have a particular set theme stapled to them. You can see there's a number of exiles, a number of instances I suppose where an opponent wouldn't want your cards to end up in the graveyard. So I wonder if we're going to see more exiling generally in the instants and sorceries. Be interesting to note. Yeah, that seems to be a thing. It's trying to keep it out of the graveyard. And of course we've got cycling blending itself in here as well, and then there's all these split cards as well that are combined with seemingly regular, stuff in the bit you cast like normal, and then we've got these other casting from the graveyard effects. But they're very much the sort of thing that you'd expect to be done in that colour, I think. So yeah, it's always interesting to see how they mesh themes and strategies together on the instants and sorceries, which is why I will spend a little bit of time going through them. 35 sorceries. We had this one as interesting, Approach of the Second Sun, which was an alternative win condition. There's a mill there. The next blue spell. Some disruption stuff in black. Of course, remember we've got the Planeswalker deck cards mixed in here as well. More cycling. There's also the green land tutoring, and then those aftermath spells. Very interesting. Oh, there's our destroy target artifact or land. So that's the thing, and it's sort of starting to notice. So where they've got something fairly regular for that particular colour, then additionally they've got something else like cycling stapled to it. And back to the full set. So 269 cards in boosters, 287 if you include all the Planeswalker deck shenanigans and the deck builder's toolkit. Okay, most expensive card in the set if we don't consider the promos or the list or anything else. Just regular boosters. So Anointed Procession, Combat Celebrant, you can see here certainly, and this is something that's come up before, not all invocations are old reprints. The only thing they're a reprint of is something that's in the set, and there's a the subset of those within that invocation set. But from what I remember, it's always slightly smaller than, or slightly less than, the reprints that are in there. Oh wow, that's a big drop. Oh, actually, it was a drop from here. Sorry, I didn't spot that. So 2 cards in. Once we get past there, we've already dropped to below. We're below that $10 threshold that I always sort of work to. So what else have we got here? Looks like it's the gods and planeswalkers that are bubbling to the surface. Maybe. But most of those look like they're below $5. Yeah, so that's a pretty steep drop off. Okay. So, EDH ranking, EDH rec ranking. What's the most popular cards on their database in terms of stuff that at the time weren't reprints? Anointed Procession, Approach the Second Sun, Pontu's Monument, Irrigated Farmland, Pull from Tomorrow. There's a split card, and we've got Harvest Season. Yeah, it was interesting where the monuments feature. So obviously popular in mono black decks. So try and commit that to memory. So here are the reprints. Even Mind Sensor was reprinted in the set. And from what I remember, this was quite a difficult card to get hold of prior to this. So it was only printed in Future Sight. It was printed at Uncommon. Am I right about that? It's difficult to tell because I can't remember historically what the price was. I don't think the price was through the roof on this, but I remember it being on the slightly higher end side at one point, up to till this getting reprinted. But it was originally Uncommon, so yeah, I can't be sure on that. But certainly you can see why it was popular in EDH white decks. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. Now, of course, that assumes that you're not playing too much tutoring. What was that? That was reprinted in Commander Legends Baldur's Gate. So Tormented Voice cancel, Evolving Wilds, not surprising. I pretty much know what we're going to see here. Yeah. So Evolving Wilds, that wasn't a reprint in this set. So reprint, not a reprint, reprint, not a reprint, not a reprint, reprint. Okay. And then as I've started doing this now, I'm going to carry on with it. Legendaries in order on popularity on EDH Rec. Summit, Voice of Dissent, Ronos the Indomitable, Oketra the True, Apatra Vizier of Poisons. Now, when I looked at this, I was spoiled for choice. I thought, well, I could go with some sort of monocoloured Amonkhet god, and I did look at Naheb. I thought, well, Minotaur tribal might be fun, but I think quite recently I've done quite a few tribal decks, so I wanted to play around with Hepatra, so like a -1 deck where Hepatra doesn't specifically mention poison counters. So I want to see how that pans out. So it's a -1/-1 theme, and see whether that, and try and avoid, so -1/-1 without being infect, if that makes sense. So see what gets suggested. Is it more -1/-1 that we saw in this, along with Wither, maybe? So we'll see when we come to do the episode what the algorithm in EDH Rec, not EDH Rec, in Architect, because it does use the EDH Rec ranking, but Architect, what it picks. So I'm curious. Okay, so back to the set overall. So the Planeswalker decks, what did they look like? So they were white, red and black green. So that looks like enemy colours to me. And indeed, yep, the Gideon deck, as we've seen. Again, a lot more higher rarities in this set, and the exclusive cards. And then the Liliana deck, same thing. Interesting they were playing the cartouches in the deck. Oh, the booster battle packs. These things. So 2 single colour 30 card welcome decks and 2 Amonkhet booster packs. So this was a sort of variant of, if you've ever played Pack Wars, it's a little bit like that with a twist. I actually prefer Pack Wars myself, but yeah. These were big box store only releases. And then, this was always a favourite of mine, the Deck Builders Toolkit. I think I've opened every single one of these that was ever released, including on one occasion, for one of them, I think two Deck Builders Toolkits of the same era. Although, if you remember that in the course of a year, they did slightly change the booster packs sometimes to cope with rotation in the early, because the timing was out of whack as to when they released them. So if I just scroll down here, you can see there's the fixed content. So those definitely revolved around, there's the 5 colours, there's some rares. You're starting to get rares in the Deck Builders Toolkits now. I can't remember when that started, but I think this wasn't the first toolkit they did that for. And then we had those dual lands and then the basic land pack. I think both myself and viewers of the channel, it's been brought up a number of times, always felt it would have been nicer if they'd maybe taken out some of these and included the land in amongst this as the count, and then they could have included more cards generally, or some interesting, 2 colour stuff. Then this is a semi-random, so you got a choice of, a randomly chosen choice of 4 out of 11 possible ones. 6 commons, 4 uncommons, representing 1 of 11 possible deck strategies. And the Evolving Wilds was slipped in amongst the semi-random cards. So you get the first one, then an Evolving Wilds, and the second of the groups, and so on. Oh, there we go. There's a Varus cut-off, so... And then it just disappeared. One day it wasn't there. And we were all very sad. Well, I was. Okay, I've kept this pretty simple in my seeding. So, yeah, we're going to build a Patra deck, or we're going to let EDHREC, the algorithm that's built into Architect, help us do that. So I'll go through this deck when we come to do it, but you can see I've kept it pretty simple. I haven't poured in a lot of creatures. Yeah, I just wanted to dial it back a little bit and see where it goes, and then I'll tweak accordingly. So I'm looking forward to this. This looks interesting thing to try out. So -1/-1 counters and green snake creature tokens with Death Touch. Okay, thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.